All right, welcome back to the Spinnin Backfist MMA Show. It is Robbie Fox, it is Big Ev, and it is frequent guest on the show at this point. One of our most recurring guests, if not the most recurring, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. Thanks for being back on the show.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a great thing for us. I hope it's a good thing for you. Yeah.
Had the champ out 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. We're honored to have you back all the time.
Hey, love being here. Love being here.
In New York to talk about the trilogy.
Yep.
One is finally coming to the U.S., Colorado, and you've got the trilogy with Moraes. This is your first trilogy in your career.
Yep.
We were just looking down the list. You've had a lot of back-to-back, or not back-to-back, but rematches with guys. You've had a couple. First trilogy, it's huge for you, and you're one apiece. This is, like, massive. Would you consider this one of the biggest fights of your career?
I think all of my fights are is a big fight of my career. You know, I think this fight with Adrian Moraes, the third one, is my first trilogy. That just means I lost one. And now we're going to go out here and settle the score.
Yeah. And it's in Colorado. First time fighting at Elevation for you?
Second time. My first fight in second fight in WEC against Nick Pace. I fought at Elevation. I went out there early. I honestly didn't feel it I didn't feel it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel like it slowed me down. And I think I felt it after the fight, but not
really?
during the fight. Yeah. So I think, me going out there early, I'm 36 now, so I know how to fight. And I feel I'll be able to make the right adjustments in the fight. The biggest thing is that I run high on octane. Like, I just go.
Yeah.
So if I get tired, it'll be me gassing myself out. So I think me getting out there early is going to help me just get a little adjusted and see how it goes.
So you're going to Colorado early. Have you been doing any sort of like you put on the Bane mask and do all that stuff?
No, it doesn't work that way, because what actually happens when you're at sea level, we have, X amount of red blood cells. And when you go up to elevation and you're not acclimated, what ends up happening is that there's a lack of oxygen up there. So you basically just gas up, just a lack of oxygen. But once you start training at sea level, your body realizes that you're at you're at elevation. It starts creating more red blood cells for you. So the red blood cells carries oxygen to your muscle. So it's a scientific science behind it that your body gets adjusted to it, and then you're able just to go.
Unreal. The science behind like fighter elevation, all of that, very fascinating.
So to answer that question, so if I were to train with the elevation mask on my face, once I take it off, my body would be acclimated back to sea level. So you have to go up there, live, eat, breathe, sleep, poop, pee at altitude for your body to get acclimated. So you do see some people, they'll sleep in the tent or whatever, but once you step out of that tent, your body's right back you're right back to sea level. So
gotcha.
When you want to get acclimated to sea level, there was one guy that I didn't know, but I heard of in the city I live in, that he is a professional cyclist. So his house is at elevation. So the only time he gets to sea level is when he goes out of the house. So he trains at his house, he does everything at his house. And it's at elevation. I found out because USADA told me about him.
USADA told you about him?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Because
because they have to go, all the professional athletes in our area.
Yeah.
And then I said, what's the craziest thing you've seen? She goes, I had a gentleman who was a professional cyclist, and his whole house was at altitude, like it was a hyperbaric house.
The USADA people going up hitting gas. Like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Did USADA ever come at you in like a weird position or spot that you were in, or was it always at home?
Liquor store.
Liquor store.
Shit.
Yeah. That's one thing I love about USADA. USADA was the best at catching anybody who was cheating. I'm sure they made mistakes here and there, but that's the time when you catch people is when they're least expecting it, right?
Yeah.
And they'll, I'll be at the liquor store. They're like, "Where you at?" I'm like, "At the liquor store." "Don't move. We're coming right now." I'm like, "All right, come get it." I set my location. Come in the back of the bathroom. Gave him a sample. And I was like, "You good?" I was like, "You want some? I'm here. You want a beer or something?" So yeah, I love USADA days.
Did you have to explain that to the people at the front desk? Like, hey, I'm about to...
No, because they came with the briefcase and they showed them IDs. Like, hey, we're with USADA. This is a professional athlete. And they're like, yeah, we know who he is. And they're like, okay,
Unreal.
go in the back. So, yeah.
They ever, I know Volkanovski told a time about they woke him in the middle of the night, ever anything like that with you, or they pissed you off?
No, not at all, because they would come in the morning. And, like, this is the thing people don't realize is that they can come at your door and you have to open it, but you don't have to get the sample there. The guy will sleep at the corner. Like, they came at me and I was playing World of Warcraft, and I was tanking the dungeon. If anybody out there knows how World of Warcraft goes, if your tank leaves, then you're pretty much screwed. USADA came to my house, I was playing WoW, and I said, hey, I got to finish this dungeon. I'm the tank. You can sit right there. He goes, no problem. Just let me know you're done. I'm like, perfect. And I played 45 minutes a game to finish the dungeon, and then I gave my sample. So, I mean, granted, yeah, you get woken up, but you're like, hey, you woke me up. I'm going to finish sleeping. I'll wake you up. You can sit in the corner and watch me sleep, and I'll give my sample when I'm done. You can do that.
Honestly, I could definitely see guys like making. I mean, you're probably generous making them sit there 45 minutes. I could see some guys being like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna fuck with this guy.
Yeah.
Make him sit there for like 4 hours.
Probably.
Yeah, like for me, she knew I was playing video games, and I told her the importance of me finishing that dungeon, and she was totally
tanking the dungeon lady.
Yeah, she was totally respectful, and then she let me finish it, and then I said, all right, guys, be right back. Went in there, gave my sample, my blood, and my urine, and she left, and that was it. So I think, and 9 out of 10 times when it's this, it's usually, from my understanding, it's not this. It's the same person that comes and collects the sample, depending on where you're at.
Oh, so you're always dealing with the same
I'm always
person.
dealing
You
with
kind
the
of get to know
same
them.
person. You kind of get to know them, right? Like, she would show up unannounced, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, she said, I follow you on social media, Twitter, Instagram. I know where you're at all the times, and I'll just come whenever they tell me
She's
to
a
come meet you.
professional stalker.
She was a professional stalker. That's what she said. She was, I'm a professional stalker.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, good for you. I mean, granted, she would have my schedule, so I mean, she would have had a one-up on all the stalkers, but
Yeah, and
you
she
know.
shows up and she's like, give me some pee.
Yep.
Like, that is the weirdest,
She
to
goes,
explain
I
that
need-
to an outsider.
She goes, I need your pee in your blood. I'm all right, come on. Do you, girl.
Blood sample every time, too?
No, it's always random with blood sample.
Gotcha. That's crazy. Crazy world to live in
But
for
that's-
professional athletes.
But that's how they would catch them.
yeah.
That's how you catch
Yeah.
the cheaters, right? Because if I know I'm about to fight, and then I'm like, okay, I'm about to fight, so everything's gonna get more height, and I'm gonna get off my juice or whatever. Then it'd be hard to catch them. But you catch me, I'm 6 months out from a fight, and I'm not doing anything, and you come, boom, get them. Then that's when you're catching them at the least expected time.
Yeah, that's when people have to start hiding under octagons, allegedly.
Oh God, leave that man alone.
One's debut in America, though. This is huge for just the live audience getting to go to a one fight, getting to see this huge trilogy fight. Obviously, I feel like the American audience, the diehard MMA fans, are already watching one.
Yeah.
They have been watching one for
Yep.
your fights and a ton of other great fighters as well. But this, I think, is going to grow the company a lot in the States, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. I think this is the first footing to getting the company to grow in America. I think second would be getting more American talent. I always use a reference to, F1 formula. It's very huge over there in the European area of the world because a lot of the drivers are European and Saudi Arabia. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe so. And I think the third thing would be just keep on putting on amazing fights. So once you establish a footprint, now you got to start broadening out and getting more American talent, more big names, and while building other stars and introducing guys like Fabricio Andrade to the American population, and having more fights here. Like you think about all of the other organizations that have fights just in America, they're focused in America. You'll see other, like Bellator will go to like England, London, or whatever, but they'll always come back here. To even with the UFC, they'll be here. They'll go to Singapore. They'll go to China. They'll go to, they don't go to Thailand. They don't go there, but they'll go to Asia just a little bit, but they always or European. So I think this is just the first stepping stone just to get us here, and they continue to create momentum and buzz.
Any extra pressure for you on that? Kind of you obviously you're carrying it and everything.
Nah, dog, because I've been doing this for a long time. So I mean, I've been here in the States. I've headlined massive cards, and for me, it's just go out there and fight. At the end of the day, my job as an athlete is to fight. All this extra curriculum, like building the fight up, talking about it, doing all the media press, that's just ice cream. Luckily, I've been doing it since 2009, so it's kind of second to nature for me. But pressure on to like lead the charge, who's got to make a statement, blah, blah, blah. So, one, I'm American. I've already have established roots here from the previous organization, and then third, I'm always going out there and put on a good fight. So I think it's pretty easy for me. So it's no pressure whatsoever.
And you've been talking about this fight, or at least that you might not have much more time left in the sport, in fighting.
Yep.
Do you want to stay around one and fighting in general when you retire as a fighter? Like, would you see yourself as, hear you talking about, building one in the U.S. Could you ever see yourself recruiting fighters into one and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. I think that's a great avenue for me to go down. I've been with the company for 4 years. I'm very versed in the American culture of mixed martial arts. I'm a face you can trust, I guess you can say. And I think at the end of the day, I've seen different eras of the bigger organization in North America, not just with the UFC, but you think about Bellator, you think about Strikeforce, you think about Elite XC. I mean, all those big organizations that have been here. I kind of seen them kind of run, not behind the scenes, but you see, what made them big, what made them successful. You look at the Strikeforce days, you had the AKA, you had Daniel Cormier, you had Luke Rockhold, you had Jacare, you had Tim Kennedy. Those guys put on those master fights, and you look at Bellator, you look at back in the day of Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler, and you look at the Pitbull brothers, and you look at Michael Bennett Page. The list is going on. You even look back in the old days of the UFC with Tim Sylvia, Matt Hughes, GSP, Matt Serra. I mean, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz. I mean, the list just goes on. So I think I could be a good ambassador for one championship when it comes to building the market here. I think the biggest thing would be just scouting American talent, building them up, getting them right fights, getting them in front of the right PR, working on not their social media game, but also their speaking game when they go out and do these media tours, because they're not easy, right? I mean, like I said, I've been doing it for a very long time, but the first time I started doing it, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be a great fight. I'm not sure. Now it's like I'm so versed.
Just have a conversation.
I just having a conversation where I feel confident about what I say and I believe in what I say. So I think I could be a good ambassador. It's all about, do I want to do that? So we'll have to see when the time comes.
That's my question. Like, retiring from fighting, if I put myself in your mindset, one of the best things about it seems to be like, let me not have to deal with MMA fans for a little bit. Just for a little bit. Let me, get out of that world. Step out of the bubble.
Yeah, and I kind of do that when I'm out of the fight game. When I'm done fighting, I go back home, I start working on my YouTube channel, start creating content, hang out with the kids, live travel, do all that stuff. So I'm not really around. I don't hang out in MMA Reddit, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not on there like, oh, da 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 da.
Whoa, careful.
Yeah,
sorry.
Sorry. So for me, I'm not really there. So I'm not getting bombarded with MMA fans all the time.
Yeah.
I'll continue to still stay active and work out and compete in jiu-jitsu hopefully. But as far as like stepping away from the sport and like the fans, I don't think I need to do that. Like it's not as invasive as you guys think it might be.
Yeah. You mentioned Tim Sylvia too. I just have to bring this guy up. He's a kind of a legend on our show.
Yeah.
Did you know that he's Pete Davidson's bodyguard apparently?
Pete Davidson's bodyguard. Really?
That's what was brought up by one of our chat members.
Hey, good for him.
Really
he's got to become like our white whale to get him on the show.
So now we're like,
he's got to become like an inside joke on the show that we need him on.
Oh,
and I would love to have him on. He'd be great, I think.
Yeah. I think what's he doing now too? Bare knuckle or slap?
He just signed up for like not what Dana's doing, but like a different slap
league.
Really?
Type league,
good for him. That's the thing in life. You have so many different avenues you can take, and I think for him, I remember after he got done with the mixed martial arts career, he became a cop in his hometown and whatnot. Now I'm hearing that he's Pete Davidson's bodyguard. Now he's doing a slap fighting league. So hey, if he's having a good time, he's not bringing any harm to anybody. Why not?
Maybe slaps are bringing harm to some cheeks.
Yeah.
That sounded like it came out wrong, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Slapping cheeks.
Yeah.
I was like, going off, obviously, you wouldn't mind being an ambassador. I mentioned even before I wanted to ask you this, obviously very well spoken, intelligent. Broadcasting ever something that interests you at all?
Yeah, I think broadcasting, I done my first one of the Amazon Prime cards, the Super Bond versus Chingas fight. I really enjoyed that. And I think for me, as long as I could be myself and then not get into character, but just shoot the craps, shoot the shit with my. I always forget this is rated R, so I can say shoot the shit.
Yep.
So shoot the shit with the team. I just talk about the fights. I'm not a big fan about doing any studying because I want to give the raw reaction that the fans are going to get when I'm watching it live, right? Obviously, I have 18 years of experience in combat above the average fan that doesn't even fight. But for me to give my raw reaction to what's going on in live time is something that I would love to bring to it, right? Because I can imagine, I think me sitting here saying, okay, so we got Chingas versus Superbond. Okay, well, Superbond does this and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, I'll do a little bit of research, but I don't want to go down like, oh, he has 18 fights and, 6 losses and 20 of those are knockouts, whatever. I think that's a little bit redundant. I don't really care about that. Yeah. I want to, like, give the play-by-play of like what's actually going on and my full natural reaction. That's what I want to bring to the circle if I have the opportunity to do that.
I saw you do some of that on your YouTube with the street beefs.
Yeah, the street beefs. Yeah, that's what I like to do. Like, people are like, hey, man. And like with that whole thing, we have a Discord community, and I like to allow them to put the videos on there. I actually just did another reaction video on something totally different. It's not just street beefs, but that's the one that gets the most buzz.
I'm a long-time street beefs watcher.
Yeah, so, I mean, which one I just broke down? I just saw Wolverine versus El Coyote, East Coast versus West Coast. This was a boxing match. And I just broke it down live, and a lot of fans, they actually appreciate that. Anomaly, just 60 and 61-year-old guy who just fought. I mean, you're probably old school Beach and Menua, Italian Tyson.
Yep, that's Italian Tyson, one of my favorites.
Italian Tyson.
Hey man, what's the short guy?
Baby Hulk.
But yes,
Baby Hulk.
Baby Hulk probably my favorite.
I know more guys on the fucking roster.
Baby Hulk is a monster.
Yeah.
That dude's a beast.
But you just giving my live reaction and giving my live play of those has helped me, become a better commentator and speaking about fights, because I have no idea what these guys do or where they come from or their background, and I just basically give my analysis of what they should and what they could have done better. And I'm not perfect. I have faults. I'm not the greatest of all time.
Yeah, some would argue.
Well, some would argue.
Some would say you are the greatest of all time.
Yeah, but for me, I mean, if everybody sees something different when they're watching something, right? So, but the street beef stuff is great. So I think, and I just did another one. It wasn't about street beef, but this one was about mindset between fixed and growth mindset. So a different reaction video, because I don't want my YouTube channel just to be all about reacting to street beefs, right? I wanted to be a community base, playing video games for most of the part. And then if somebody drops in there, like someone's like, man, we should drop memes. And I was like, guys, my humor is derogatory. Like, the humor would not, I won't find the stuff you guys think is funny. So.
This is a huge fart. I almost said a huge card, a huge fight. I came out a huge fart. This is a huge card, huge fight. When you fight someone more than once, like say when you fought Cejudo or Benavidez,
yep.
Do you, on the second fight, does it almost snap back into place like, oh yeah, this is what it's like to fight them, like riding a bike? Or is it very different? Do people come in with different approaches?
It's different. It's always different. It's because, it's only a certain amount of time you get to spend with that person in the first time. Right?
Like these two fights that you've had with Moraes, like they haven't gone 5 rounds.
You haven't gone 5 rounds, yeah. So if you look at, we've gone 5.5 rounds, maybe 6 rounds. If last one was 4 rounds, and then the first one was run a round and a half. So we'll just say 6 rounds, just the round up or whatever. I mean, when it was with John Dotson, it was full 50 minutes we fought, right? Yeah. So that was a little bit different, and we also had time apart from each other. Mm-hmm. Like we were talking about this earlier today in the other interviews, is that everybody's like, oh, well, I actually have to say it. They're like, this isn't really a rival, because usually rivals, you're with each other for a very long time, right? You have, you go back with my John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Mm-hmm. They would fight, and they would both go off and do their own thing. They would always be in each other's back mirror, looking at each other. Then they'll come back together, fight again, and then so forth and so forth. Same thing with Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard. You look at me versus John Dotson, me versus Joseph Medius, me versus Henry Cejudo. Mm-hmm. Like, those were like, and then I even brought the reference of, Megatron and Optimus Prime, Shredder and the Turtles, Batman and Joker.
Yeah.
Batman and Joker, it was pretty much a whole season of it, Yeah. This is like 2 episodes, me and Adriano, right? So this is episode 3, and then after that will be long and forgotten. So, but yeah, we're looking forward to it. We're going to go out there and see what we can do, and hope we put them away again.
So you don't consider this a rivalry?
No, not when I think about it, because it's 2 back-to-back.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when I think of a rivalry, like when I was in this gut just came up because somebody said it today, and I was like, I don't feel like it's a rivalry. And I'm like, why? And I was like, because I didn't have to watch him, right? Like, it wasn't something I had to keep my eye on. Where when I was fighting John Dotson, I beat him in January 2013 in Chicago. It's like I beat him, and then he went off and knocked out this guy, beat this guy, and he worked his way back up to the title while I was still winning too. So we were always converging like this, right? For me and Adriano, it's like this. Like, we never had time to actually go off and do our own thing. So that's why I wouldn't call it a rival, where, after I remember press conference, like, hey, John Dotson just want to fight this earlier today on a prelim. What do you look like? He looked like he was really good. Do you think he's a case to make for a title? I'm like, yeah, if he keeps on winning, I could see him fighting again. Then we fight another card, UFC 187, whatever it may be. So that's where it's like, even with Joseph Benavidez, fought at UFC 152. Then I kept on winning, and then next you know, we fought in 2 years later we fought again in Sacramento in his hometown. So you kind of have this build up. It's just like Shredder. It's like if you're watching Teenage Mutant Turtles, and you see Shredder show up for 2 episodes, you're like, oh, that guy was cool. But you see Shredder appearing all the fucking time. It's like, that's the rival. That's the person you see that's part of their career, or that's going to be lingering along, slowly hiding behind the career. But I'm at the age now, I'm 36, where he wouldn't have the opportunity to linger around often. I would just be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Smaller blip on the radar.
Yeah, small blip on the radar. I mean, he's a great opponent. Like, when we try to get into talks of rivalry, right? When we look at, like, I looked it up today, and it's, if I was to consider him my rivalry, then everybody in the whole division would be considered my rivalry, because a rivalry is pretty much another component that's in the same league or aspect of competition that you are in, which you mean that Kairat Akhmatov is a rivalry, Yuya Wakamatsu is a rivalry, because we're all different components in the same genre. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, when I look at you look at the greatest rivalries in history, like Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez. I mean, they went back and forth, back and forth. I mean, when they're in the Bellator days, it was over and over again. I mean, you even look at Michael Bisping versus Luke Rockhold.
Yeah.
Like, they fought, he choked him out.
Dan Henderson, even with him, came back.
Right? So it's just a long period of time when you see that their lives are connected or intertwined with each other for a long period of time, because they're both doing their own thing, and then it comes back together, where me and Adrian never got the opportunity to entwine. You look at Izzy versus Alex Pereira.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a great example.
They have a great, I mean, would it have been better for Alex to go off and do some more and Izzy work his way back up? Absolutely. But they have history way back in the fucking kickboxing days.
Yeah.
To where it's traveled. And then, he comes and beats him the first time in the UFC. And so while, once again, he was working his way up as a contender. So, I mean, this is my perspective. A lot of people might disagree with me, but I think I've given some valid facts about when it comes to rivalry. Like, even Henry Cejudo, another one going on. I beat him. He went on a 4-fight win streak, knocked out Wilson Hayes. I beat him. He fought Joseph Benavidez. Went out and knocked out Wilson Hayes. Beat a couple other opponents, and then the combination of us coming up to fight each other for the second time was such a big fight, because there was so much more storyline than just me and him fighting again back to back.
Yeah, he's coming back soon. What do you think about that matchup?
I'm excited
against Aljo.
I'm super excited, man. I got the opportunity to train with Henry Cejudo a couple times, and he's looking good. He seems sharp. I mean, being out of the game for 3 years, he just got to go back there, get his feet wet, and see what happens. But I have Henry winning that fight.
I was going to ask, do you believe in ring rust?
Yeah, but I feel like Henry, sometimes when you step away from the ring, you actually get better, because you get an opportunity to actually figure out how you are as an athlete, how you can approach the game different, and you can see everybody else grow, right? And then when he gets back in there, he's going to have to see. I think he will still be in good shape. Well, he'll be in good shape. I still think his style will be very good for the sport. To where you look at some people like, man, the sport just passed them up. They didn't keep up. They didn't keep evolving. I think he's evolved from the time away from the sport.
So you think probably his coaching is going to help him in the fight? Like him coaching all these other guys leading up to their fights?
Yeah, because he has to see a different perspective. He can see a different perspective. He worked with me, John. He's worked with a lot of athletes in the last 3 to 4 years. That he's
Even Figueiredo, that was great camp for the trilogy.
Yep. And the biggest thing, and I even told him about Moreno. I was like, Moreno's great, but I think you kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of domesticated him a little bit. Right? Like, when he came out, he was so fucking nasty with the right hand and just go. He had a little cardio issue, and then Henry was like, he's just too big. Like, he needs to keep his body lower. So, that's the thing. But Figueiredo is absolutely an amazing athlete, great grappling, great stand-up, lots of power. And even Brandon Moreno, another great athlete in the division. So,
do you, with obviously Cejudo, Aljo, obviously these great wrestlers, do you see it playing out in the feet because of that?
I see it playing on the feet or a grappling exchange. I don't see it being in the clinch. I mean, it could be in the clinch, because me and Henry worked a lot in the clinch. I think it's going to play out in a stand-up. And then I tell Henry, I was like, the biggest thing I watch out for Aljo, another guy who's, figured out what he's very good at, which is smothering somebody, get on their back, locking the body triangle up, and then wearing them down. Yeah. So if he can keep Aljo off his back, I think you're going to see Henry Cejudo become the new world champion.
And, huge for the division, too. Yeah. Aljo, big boy.
Big boy. Henry's a big boy, too.
For sure, he's thick,
He's a thick
stocky,
boy.
Strong, too, right?
Very, very strong. Very strong hips. I never got a chance to actually work out with Aljo, but Aljo seems very long leverage, long legs, good grappler. Where I feel Henry's a better striker on the feet. He moves better. He has better rhythm. And so I think on the feet, Henry has the advantage. And I think on the ground, grappling-wise, it's Aljo. And wrestling-wise, wrestling's such a small part of mixed martial arts where you wrestle somebody, you take him down, okay, you're in the grappling world, right? So we're going to have to see where it goes from there.
Another thing I was curious to hear your take on is the whole Francis Ngannou situation right now. We hear a lot of fighters kind of going back and forth. A lot of fighters saying what Francis did was amazing and stepping out and taking a gamble on yourself is great. And then other people like Chael Sonnen saying he really kind of fumbled the bag here and he should be going back and calling UFC and saying, I want to come back.
No.
Where do you fall?
I think I fall that he did an amazing. I think at the end of the day, nobody's going to take care of yourself besides you. Right, so I think he has the opportunity. Like the biggest thing that, my coach always says is the best thing that could ever happen in mixed martial arts is the Muhammad Ali Act.
Yeah.
And what that means for people out there is that an athlete or champion doesn't have to be tied down to one organization. And imagine if I was like, if me and Adriano came together and say, hey, me and Adriano are going to fight. Who wants to pay us the most money to host this fight? Then you have the UFC, you have PFL, you have Bellator, you have One Championship, you have Verizon, you have all the organizations in the world saying, we really want this fight. We're going to give you guys both $10 million. And what else do you guys want? And then me and Adrian, me and him can sit down and actually kind of divulge what we want as our pay. I mean, you look at Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis. It's on Showtime, so Showtime Boxing got a hold of this. You look at Jake Paul and Nate Diaz, they're going to zone.
Yep.
So you get to lobby and pick all the stuff. You're not just tied down. So I think for the opportunity for Francis Ngannou to get out of his contract with the UFC, he was a heavyweight champion of the world. Now he gets to pick and choose who's going to pay him the most value for that he wants, right? So for him to call back at the UFC like, hey, let me come back and fight. I mean, he can do that as long as he's going to get his price, but nobody wants to be locked down. Like that's the biggest thing that we see going forward, that us ex-mixed martial artists. Like I talked to Tyron Woodley. He was like, dude, I'll never go back to MMA. I was like, why? And he was like, you have no leverage. You can't do anything. He was like, I made more money fighting Jake Paul because I got the opportunity to actually like argue my worth. And it was a lot easier getting something done than in mixed martial arts. So no, I don't think he fumbled the bag. I think he did a smart thing, and now we even try to shop and get him, and obviously we couldn't come to terms. What I mean by me is one championship. But at the end of the day, I think it's smart for him to bet on himself and get the money he deserves.
Yeah.
Now, we're both Francis guys, so I just want to ask this just that, like, I hope he makes $1 billion, so don't take this the wrong way. I just like devil's advocate. Do you think seeing now the way it's obviously something could happen we don't know, maybe there's some talks we don't know. Just to play devil's advocate, do you think maybe there's a chance he could have made a mistake just in terms of, it seems like it's been a little bit now, there's some big fights been thrown out there that have been made, and it just seems like nothing's come to fruition yet for him.
No, I think that's for him. It's because he's waiting for the right price, right? It's just like buying stocks, right? It's like, oh man, when is the perfect time to get an Apple? You never know. You watch the stock for years and years, and then you might not find your right entry point, right? So sometimes when you're trying to look for that right entry point, that right number, and at the end of the day, he's got enough money, and he's still relevant, right? Because I mean, who else is big in the heavyweight division? I can name them. You got Jones, Stipe.
I think you're there.
Gone.
Yeah.
Who? Gone.
But he said gone.
Gone.
But even his stock obviously just took a little bit of a hit.
Yeah.
Great fighter, obviously, but of course.
Cyril Gane. I mean, if I look at One Championships thing, I think we have Arjun Butler, and then we have Buchecha, and then other than that, I can't name a lot, and I'm in the sport itself, so I think Francis Ngannou's stock, even though he hasn't been active lately. I mean, shit, look, Henry Cejudo took 3 years off. He's about to come back again. So Francis Ngannou, if he would have lost, then that's a totally different situation. But he won that fight. He had to get surgery on his knees. He fixed that out. Now he's shopping. It's just like buying a brand new car. You want to jump and buy the first, model of the Cybertruck. You want to wait a couple years for the Cybertruck to come out. They fix all its nooks and crannies. Then you get the right Cybertruck and you're ready to rock and roll and be good. So I think him just taking his time is the smartest thing he can do because he's gonna get the right bang for his buck.
Yeah, he's just, as a fan of his, my biggest fear for him is just that, one that he's on the older side. He's like 37, 38.
Yep.
I'm just afraid of him on that. And I'm just afraid of him playing out where he where the time almost takes too long, and then that deal that he was looking for never comes. Or that's what I'm afraid of as a fan of his.
That is a downside of passing up on deals. But sometimes you have. You say 37, 38, but for a guy who hasn't really taken as much damage in his career,
it's fair.
I don't know how old Tyson Fury is or Deontay Wilder, but I know those guys aren't spring chickens. I know those guys got to be in their mid-30s, I would like to think. And I think, especially if it's boxing, I mean, you think about it, you wait that long and you get one of those fights, $30 million. I mean,
of course.
I mean, that's life-changing money. I mean, that's very, very big life-changing.
I just feel like these guys are playing games with them. I'm trying the real boxers.
Oh, yeah.
I just think Fury has no real interest in fighting.
Oh, I think he does. I think Fury.
You think he does?
I think Fury. 1,000%.
You think so?
I think Fury might.
Like what? Because even they talk about Wilder, which that'd be awesome too. These guys. I just feel like they'd rather, if the price for them is the same, they'd rather fight a real boxer.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No,
I feel like in their mind they might look at it as an easier fight because he's an MMA.
Yeah,
guy.
I agree with that.
Exactly.
But I going off that, I think because of that, I think they might see it as like, is it worth my time kind of thing, or does it become like a sideshow thing instead of like a real fight? You know what I mean? Because there's like sick of these guys out there. They're trying to make these big fights like Joshua. In boxing, there's a lot of good heavyweights right now.
Yeah.
So there's guys from the fight is more where you said in like MMA. There's not a ton.
There's not a ton. It's very, very, very hard to for that star power. I mean, there's lots of great heavyweight.
Of course.
Heavyweight athletes out there in the world. Don't mean no disrespect to anybody out there. It's just like when you look at, we're talking about the casual fans out here, right? So, because the casual fans are the ones that kind of pay for the pay-per-views and all that stuff. So, Francis is still a household name, and yes, he does have that potential of losing out on that great opportunity, or that great opportunity might never come because Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder. I think, isn't Tyson Fury and Usyk about to fight?
But they've been playing kind of game.
Yeah.
It seems like Fury's kind of been playing games with it.
Yeah. And
I
so
think Usyk obviously really wants it.
Yeah, so that's a beautiful thing about boxing is that they get the opportunity to play that game because they're waiting for that right number, waiting for that right company who's going to pick it up to give them the most bang for their buck, right? Because
of course.
I think in the day they all know they're the best fighter in the world, but they're shopping to get the right bang for them because all them guys got money. They got plenty of money. So they're like, I'm going to wait. I'm so sharp. The Gypsy's doing his thing, and then once somebody comes in like HBO or Showtime or DAZN or Jake Paul just made $30 million fighting Tommy Fury.
That was ESPN Plus, yeah.
It was ESPN Plus.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, they're just shopping out, but that's the thing about boxing. One day ESPN Plus gets the right to stream this fight. Now DAZN gets the right to stream this fight. When you look at our situation, we have one championship. Everything's under the Amazon umbrella, which is absolutely amazing. You look at UFC, it's under the ESPN Plus. You look at Bellator, I believe it's under Showtime. And Paramount.
Yeah.
Yep.
Paramount. So, the company says content is king, and when you know content is king, when you have that Muhammad Ali Act that you don't get locked down to one organization, you get to pick and choose who's going to lobby for the best thing, and that's my understanding of how the Muhammad Ali Act will affect mixed martial artists world. It would benefit us because we get to shop around. We're not under one contract that says you're gonna get X, Y, and Z, blah 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 blah. Boom.
Yeah, it sounds like pretty much that's Nate's.
He
literally already said, I'm going to fight Jake Paul and I'm going to come back to the UFC.
Yeah. So
that was
but once he fights Jake Paul and he gets like that $30 million, he goes, I don't know if I'm going back to UFC.
Fair enough. I think I'm fair point.
Who else wants to fight? Because at the end of the day, it's not those guys' brands are so much bigger that they don't need like an organization to look them up.
For sure.
Right? It's like, think about it. How come Tommy Fury isn't fighting Jake? How come Tommy Fury is not fighting Nate Diaz?
Of course.
Do you think Tommy Fury is going to make the same amount of money when he fought Jake Paul?
No, of course not.
Yeah. No, because the draw is Jake Paul, just like Conor McGregor. Like Conor McGregor is big enough where if Conor McGregor did McGregor sports boxing, and he was going to fight Floyd Mayweather, do you think they would need like everybody and their mom will be lobbying for that.
Of course.
Because they know the return on investment just of having their name or streaming that is going to be through the roof. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think Francis fell on the ball. I think he's doing just what he wants to do, and I think it's smart.
Yeah, well, very interesting perspective. Thank you for being on the show again. Yeah. We're 16 days away as we record this. I think it might be 15 days as this goes out. But May 5th, One Fight Night 10, Denver, Colorado, the trilogy.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Can't
sir.
wait. Obviously, tune in there, and we'll be rooting for you.
Thanks, I appreciate it.